Yo guys, what is up? Here we are with another reading video, and I am so excited to get into this one, because I'll give you a quick spoiler. They are in New Berlin. And without further ado, let's get right into the book. The Only Thing to Fear by Caroline Ton Richmond. Oh wait, do have an update on the newest book. I have seen that there is now a, book by Caroline Ton Richmond with the same idea of this. Not the Axis powers have won World War II. Except this part, it's on the Western American territories. So just giving you a heads up. So now, without further ado, Chapter 20. The Only Thing to Fear by Caroline Ton Richmond. Chapter 20. Despite Garrison's warnings to keep their head down, Zara snuck in a few glances at the city anyway, letting her guys feast upon the splendor of New Berlin. She thought she would feel disgust at this brick and marble town, especially with the Third Reich flags flying on every building. But she couldn't peel her gaze from the shining capital. The city was, in one word, grand. Newly paved streets ran underneath Zara's feet, smooth as fresh butter. And 50-story buildings climbed to her left and right. As they ventured deeper into the capital, they passed department stores with names like Kaufhof and Alstros that featured block-long window displays of silk ball gowns and sharp-cut suits. Cafes dotted the busy roads, too, offering delicacies like chai tea and powdered donuts with raspberry filling. The heavenly sweet scent drifted into her nose, making her taste buds clamor for one bite, even though she could never afford such extravagances. Then there was the cars. Zara had never seen the likes of them before. Red Mercedes convertibles alongside black Porsche SUVs with platinum rims. The vehicles were shined to a gloss, no dents or scratches to be seen. So this is how the New Berliners live, Zara thought. While she and her uncle labored on their farm, the Nazis sipped tiny cups of espresso and drove their newly washed cars. Now the disgust rolled through her. Soon they entered the center of the capital. Gigantic German museums, once known as the Smithsonian, flanked Zara on both sides. The Museum of Industry, the Museum of Nazi Militaria, the Archives to the Territories. She looked behind her. She could also see the shrine to Adolf Hitler that was built over the raised Capitol building and decorated with enormous Nazi flags waving across its entrance. Hopefully it won't be a shrine much longer, Zara thought fiercely. We can't dawdle, Uncle Red said to her. Aline needs you to stay close. Zara hurried to catch up, murmuring an apology to Aline, whose brows were furrowed in concentration to keep them all disguised. Thanks to her ability, they'd walked the last few miles looking like a wealthy entourage of Japanese and missionaries strolling through the city. Whenever Zara caught her reflection in a store window, her eyes gaped to see her 5 inches taller and her body clad in floor-length velvet gown, the darkest of burgundies. A pair of satin heels adorned her feet as well, with a cluster of green jewels along its toe cap, the prettiest and most impractical shoe she had ever seen. The rest of the group was similarly dressed. A violet silk dress for Aline, a navy suit for Garrison, and a black tuxedo for Uncle Red, who had taken on the appearance of the Japanese ambassador. Uncle Red eyes darted up and down the boulevard, wondering if any of the Germans could see through their disguises, but she only received polite nods from pedestrians who passed them by. They turned on the Schickenblocher Avenue, named for Adolf Hitler's paternal grandmother. Zara's stomach quickly tied it into a knot. A few blocks ahead, she spotted a bright green lawn of the White House, along with the electrified fence that encircled the property. The fence had been installed after a failed assassination attempt in 1975. And I'll give you some background on that. That is actually true. There was an actual assassination attempt on the President of the United States, real world, around that time, and that's why they added that electrified fence. Just wanted to let you know that not all of this stuff is really far out. and as they drew close to it, Zara made sure to keep her distance. Every time she strayed too near the fence, she could hear the hum of the voltage. "All right," Garrison said in a hushed tone, his lips hardly moving. "Remember, if we get separated, make your way back to Dominic's factory. If it has been compromised, head to our headquarters in West Virginia. It's 10 miles south of Wardenville and built right underneath the Hotel Liberty, 150 Corona Road. Go to the lobby and tell them that the birds chime at midnight. That'll get you inside the bunker." Zara tucked away that bit of information inside her head before they shuffled towards the White House checkpoint, where a slew of armed guards scanned ID cards and ushered people through the metal detectors. "What about our IDs?" Zara whispered. "Aline and I have it covered," Garrison whispered back. "Stay calm." Sweet beaded on her palms as they edged closer to the checkpoint. Chewing her lip, Zara watched the gray-haired woman in front of them, an Austrian diplomat perhaps, present her passport and walk through the metal detector. Then it was their turn. Zara's fingers clenched around her uncle's arm. She felt him suck in a deep breath. "Identification, please," one of the guards said in German. "Here are our passports," Aline smiled. Reaching into her pocket, she took out several tattered pieces of paper and handed them to the guard. Zara's heart went from doing somersaults to double flips. Old pieces of paper? That was their plan? The urge to flee climbed up her legs, but the guard only nodded at Uncle Red. "Welcome, Ambassador Nakamura," he said. "Please remove any belts or wallets or metal items from your person and place them in the bin." Zara waited for him to scrutinize their passports again, but he had moved on to the next guest in line. A bit stunned, she watched Aline and Garrison pass through the detectives without a problem. Then it was Uncle Red's turn. He took off his belt, and Zara noticed that Aline had disguised his holstered pistol as a very large belt buckle. It was a risky move, but the guards merely ushered them along through the detector and handed the belt back to Uncle Red. Against all odds, Aline's plan had worked. Zara released her pent-up breath, but she knew the dangers were far from over. Along the path, she saw dozens of uniformed soldiers standing at attention, ready to spring into action if anything went awry. Looking up from the cobbled path, Zara almost stumbled at the sight of the White House, which loomed ahead, shining like a beacon in the evening night. The house itself was enormous. The recent renovation had doubled it in size, and equally stunning, from the handsome marble pillars to the lush flower boxes in the windows, and finally to the circular fountain that stood in the front lawn. The tinkle of bubbling water flowed into Zara's ears. After the Nazis had won the war and set about to changing Washington, D.C. to New Berlin, Adolf Hitler originally wanted to demolish the White House and build a mansion to his liking. But once he toured the building, he became partial to its stately ceilings and fine wood floors. "It would be a fine little home," Adolf had told his staff, who were tasked with burning all the filthy American artwork and replacing it with pieces of fine art that didn't make it into the Fuhrer Museum he had founded in Austria. One step at a time, they ascended the stairs to the White House and entered the grand foyer side by side. Zara's eyes widened at the stateliness of the ceiling. High above their heads, magnificent chandeliers sparkled and shone, comprised of thousands of pieces of delicate glass, and down by her feet her shoes were greeted by the finest white marble, polished to gleam like a mirror. She wondered how many cleaning girls had hunched over the cold stone to achieve such a shine. No doubt they spent hours at the task, only to receive a few mere coins for their work. A waiter approached their group with a silver tray of champagne, flutes in his hand. Zara took a glass to be polite, but her lips didn't touch the fizzing liquid. Instead, she fixed her attention on the enormous oil paintings that hung on the right, depicting an elderly Adolf with his wife Eva and their grandson Anselm. Dieter's father sitting on his lap, and with their grandson Anselm. Dieter's father sitting on his lap. The painters had treated his subjects very kindly, too kindly for Zara's taste, with apricot cheeks and wholesome white tooth smiles. Doting grandparents with their Cherbuick, we'll say that, grandchild. A lovely family portrait, Sarah thought, holding back a scowl. Adolf Hitler had overseen the deaths of millions under his reign, and yet here he sat, taking pictures of quaintness. Let's walk to the hallway to our right. I need to head downstairs. They strolled through the corridor, feigning interest in the portraits of the Nazi royalty on the walls, until the sound of party chatter faded away. Now that their group was alone, Garrison snagged an empty Hors d'oeuvre platter and headed for the very last door in the corridor. The words service entrance were painted across it. We have to be quick, Garrison said, looking to Aline. It was time for him to head to the White House basement, where he would destroy the box that controlled the elevator to the safe room, preventing Dieters from escaping. He stepped back from the group, breaking away from the concentration that kept him disguised. His crisp suit shimmered away to reveal a service uniform underneath, similar to the other workers. He hadn't worn the battle gear that the rest of the group was wearing in order to blend in with the White House staff. If I don't find you tonight, I'll meet you at the safe house. He touched each of them on the arm. Good luck. Just then, a wary blonde waitress emerged from the servants' entrance, and Garrison quickly held the door open for her. Her blue eyes searched them over their group, and her lips curled at Garrison. Get downstairs. They've been looking for Busser, she said to him. My apologies, but the ambassador and his guests are lost. I was trying to show them the way back, Garrison said smoothly. I'll take care of them. Go on downstairs, she snapped. Garrison's gaze flickered over her name tag before he bowed his head. Yes, Frau Gottlieb. Then he reached for the door, giving Aline one last glance before he disappeared. The waitress straightened her blouse and gave Uncle Red a sparkling smile. The Sea Garden is this way, Ambassador. Please walk down this hallway and turn to your right. With polite nods, they followed the waitress to the Sea Garden, long ago known as the Rose Garden, and stepped outside into the warm spring night. A hint of humidity hung in the air, a taste of the hot summer to come. Sweat gathered around Zara's neck, thanks to the stiff vest that clung to her. Usually, she loved these types of evenings, but she couldn't wait for this one to come to an end. Now that they had infiltrated the White House, she was even more eager to get it over with. She tried not to think about the soldiers surrounding them, or the bullets in their guns, ready to tear through her bones. What if one of us doesn't make it out, she thought. What if Uncle Red got caught in a sniper's crosshairs, like her mother? All of that blood. Zara's heart hammered at the possibilities, but then she felt her uncle's gaze upon her. I'm right here, he mouthed to her, and Zara's fear abated slightly. Let's find our seats, Aline said, tilting her head towards the rows of white folding chairs on the lawn. The ceremony will be starting soon. Skirting around the garden, they passed a long buffet table topped with a lush spread of appetizers available from the formal dinner before the formal dinner that would take place after the speeches. Many of the ambassadors and diplomats milled around the table, nibbling on roasted rabbit with fennel stuffing, sweet potato ganache as soft as pillows, and platters loaded with juicy berries and the biggest red grapes Zara had ever seen. Her belly growled at the sight of the spread, all of it free for her taking. But this was the Nazis' food, the Führer's food. She'd rather let her stomach groan than partake in their fare. They walked past the 10-piece band that played a repertoire of traditional German tunes, and found a trio of empty chairs. Zara studied the podium where the Führer would soon give his speech, and then she glanced towards the guards. Each of them wore a tailored black suit that helped them blend in with the other guests. But Zara noticed the earpiece tucked into their ears and their pistols bulging inside their jackets. A shiver spread over her arms. In a few minutes, those guns would be pointed at her and her uncle. Is that? Uncle Red murmured. Zara followed his eyes toward a cluster of Nazi officers. Most of them were gray-haired and thick-waisted, laughing and chewing on slices of sausage. She looked them over one by one, wondering as if her uncle was being paranoid. Then her gaze skidded to a stop. There he was, chatting with the other officers and sipping a glass of golden champagne. Colonel Eckhart. A shiver climbed down Zara's spine, followed by a burst of anger. She was about to suggest that they move seats until she remembered that they were disguised. There was no way the colonel would recognize her or Uncle Red, as long as they stayed close to Aline. Although a part of her wished that she could, the last time she had seen him, he had beaten her and thrown her into a locked room. She wouldn't mind tackling him with his very own bolt of lightning. "Do you know one of these men?" Aline said. Uncle Red nodded. "The one on the left, Colonel Eckhart, the commander of Fort Goring." "He's the one who uncovered Mission Metzger?" said Aline. One of her hands closed into a fist. Aline shifted in her wooden seat, figuring it would be best not to mention that Colonel Eckhart was Bastian's father, too. "We better stay focused. The mission comes first, right?" Aline muttered a curse under her breath and nodded sullenly while Garrus snuck one more glance at the colonel. His own fort had been bombed yesterday, and his only son had gone missing, but he had come to the gala anyway. Unbelievable. "Ladies and gentlemen," a woman's voice said over the loudspeaker, "please find your seats. The Führer's speech will begin shortly." The White House ushers moved through the garden, gently prodding the guests to finish the last remnants of the champagne. Once everybody had found their seats, the band struck up a rousing rendition of the Nazi national anthem, and the crowds rose to their feet, pressing their hands over their hearts as the song surged into a brassy crescendo. "Your hand," Aline elbowed Zara's side. Zara had been so busy trying to mouth the words that she had forgotten about her hand. She hurriedly slammed her palm against her chest, just in time for the band to draw its last note. Then the same voice blared over the loudspeakers again. "Please remain standing for His Eminence, Führer Dieter Adolf Heinrich Hitler." Rousing applause burst through the garden, and Zara did her best to join in. Beside her, both her Uncle Red and Aline clapped enthusiastically, and she tried to match them. Soon the Führer's entourage emerged from the White House. First, Rishma Balder marched into the Sieg Garden, dressed in full Nazi regula, and strode into the far end of the stage. Next, the Corps of Four walked onto the lawn, with their chins held high. The monster, the mind controller, the medic, and finally the protector, Sentinel Braun. Bile scratched at the back of Zara's throat. The last time she had seen Braun, the Sentinel had burst Miss Tally into a tower of flames. Zara's nose wrinkled at the memory of that terrible smell, and she felt the air cackle around her fingers, nibbling at her skin. Braun was so close. A few bolts of lightning would easily do her in. But Zara pushed the temptation away. No matter how much she wanted to hurt Braun, she couldn't jeopardize the mission, although she wouldn't be sorry if someone took out the protector that night. The trumpets blared an upbeat melody as the guest of honor finally arrived. At last, Führer Dieter, or his double at least, stepped onto the stage to the loudest of clapping. He saluted the audience, and they all saluted in return. Zara peered at him, amazed at the likeness that he shared with Dieter. The same round cheeks, the same thin shoulders. He even possessed the same absurd smear of a mustache that every Führer had long favored. The applause ended, and the double gripped the sides of the podium. "Citizens of the Eastern American territories, invoke ein Reich and Führer! Invoke ein Reich and Führer!" the crowd chanted back. "Many decades ago, my great-grandfather, Adolf Hitler, conquered the land that I now stand on. He claimed this nation as his own, and we built it into what it is today, a beacon of Nazi strength. Today we celebrate the decades of German rule, spreading from the shores of the Chesapeake to the plantations of the South and the banks of the great Mississippi." The double continued with his speech, praising the years of glorious Nazi rule, but Zara's attention had slipped away. Her hands were sweaty and clammy to the touch. In only a few minutes, she would have to shoot a bolt of lightning towards the podium. The entire alliance was counting on her, and she couldn't fail them, even if she couldn't shake the fear of throttling her chest. A part of her wished Bastian were here. It would have been nice with a medic to have a medic with the group, and it would have been nice just to have him next to her. Uncle Red tapped Zara's arm as if to say, "It's almost time." Shoving aside her doubts, Zara concentrated on the space above the double's head. She had one chance to make this shot, maybe two at the most. In my years as a Führer, I have tried fervently to further my great-grandfather's dream. The empire has prospered under my rule, as I further developed our military and expanded our treasury. In the footsteps of my great-grandfather, I intend to rule the Nazi Empire for many years to come. Zara's eyes watered. She reached deep inside her, channeling every bit of power that she could gather. "Charge!" she commanded. Yes, she felt it there. The charges pulling and pushing, the heat climbing degree by degree. "Charge!" The double speech went on. "And so, on this night, I ask you to join me in celebrating our rule of the Eastern American territories." He smiled as the press corps snapped his photograph. Zara's gaze slid over her shoulder towards the fence. "Where's the Alliance diversion?" "It's 7:16, Aline whispered, frowning. "I'm sure they'll be here soon. Hold on for a few more minutes." But Zara's fingers cramped as she tried to stave off the lightning. Now that she had its attention, it begged for release, snapping its electric jaws at her hand. Another minute passed before Zara noticed a few of the soldiers pressing their fingers against the earpiece. Their eyes skimmed over the electrified fence. Then she heard the shouts. "Freedom or death!" The cries multiplied by the second. There were hundreds of voices, hundreds of marching feet. Cameras flashed again, this time pointed at the fence. "Freedom or death!" Uncle Red touched his belt where the pistol was hidden before he squeezed Zara's knee. "Are you ready?" One by one, the guests swiveled in their seats, stretching their necks towards the lawn. Murmurs rumbled through the garden as the first rebels neared the fence. Three of them broke through their comrades, holding a backpack between them. A sniper shot fired from the White House rooftop, and one of the rebels staggered. 4 steps later, another bullet felled the second rebel. Zara watched, utterly frozen, as a third rebel ran to the fence. Back on the podium, the Führer pounded a fist against the wood. "What is the meaning of this?" he said. Around him, the Corps of Four edged closer, flanking the dictator. Dodging the gunfire, the third rebel reached the fence and screamed, "Freedom or death!" He reached for something in his pocket, triggering the backpack of C4, and that was when everything changed. Explosions erupted where the rebel had stood, splintering the fence over and sending a heat wave across Zara's face. The guests screamed around her, toppling chairs over and scrambling for an exit. Aline turned to Zara. "Now, release it!" Zara's fingers curled into her fist. "Charge!" she shouted in her head once again. The lightning flashed to life. The zigzag of voltage cracked the podium, and a fierce white light blanketed the stage. Zara's eyes shut automatically, and the lightning went wild, shooting its electric web over the first row of chairs. A man cried out, followed by a chorus of gasps. Zara pried her eyes again to find the double sprawled in front of the podium, his neck twisted at a sharp angle. The Corps of Four sprang into motion, hurrying towards the nearest doors to protect the real Führer from the attack. "Another one!" Aline said. Zara launched a flurry of lightning bolts towards the Corps of Four while her uncle started firing. One of Zara's bolts smacked into the monster's thick neck, the largest of the members of the Corps of Four, but he merely shrugged it off due to his bulletproof skin and ran inside. But the next one hit the mind controller's shoulder. His body spasmed, and he fell face first into the lawn. Puffs of smoke rose from his tuxedo jacket. Zara blinked. Was he dead? She stared at his crumpled form, but he didn't move. A few brave members of the press corps snapped photos or pointed their video cameras at the body, sending the footage out live. "We have to go!" Aline yanked Zara by the wrist, snapping her out of her daze. "We can't let them find Dieter." And that is the end of chapter 21. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and comment down below. And I think that's all I gotta say. So I will see you guys in the next video.